The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to the what's now I believe it's the fourth webinar we're doing together, Craig.
Yes, fourth already.
Today's webinar is going to be on industrial switches. Just as an advance warning, unfortunately we're a man down today. I know that a lot of people of you turned up for the eponymous Mark Carty, but unfortunately he hasn't been able to make it onto today's webinar. Sales.
Couldn't be bothered, Alan.
Couldn't be bothered. Sales stuff. We'll we won't talk too badly about the guys. He's out there wheeling and dealing as we speak. So unfortunately, or fortunately, you're stuck with myself. I'm Alan Jones. I'm the marketing manager of the UK and Ireland team, and our I'd say ever present. On D-Link webinars. Craig Kirby's with us, who's our technical pre-sales engineer.
Hi there, everyone.
To give him his full title. Today's webinar is a little bit more, I'd say it's a little bit more niche than the ones we've done currently. So we're looking for a lot of hardcore listeners out there. Hopefully we're going to get some tough questions that maybe even Craig can't answer. We have to take away and come back to you, but it's definitely an area that D-Link is looking at for the future. I think the market and stuff is picking up on this product, and I think it's a good time for us to talk to you guys a little bit more about how D-Link is getting into this market.
Like you said, it is a little bit more niche, but the thing with industrial switches, which we're about to find out, is that they can be placed in areas and projects.
No spoilers, Craig.
No spoilers. Placed in projects that can still be for smaller installations.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think that's what we're going to look at, the range and maybe some opportunities out there that people wouldn't consider and don't know about the product and bits like that. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is an industrial switch? Well, it's a very very easy thing to define. To define, industrial switches are basically just a normal switch that's been ruggedized. Is ruggedized the right word, Craig, you'd use? Or?
Yes and no. Some we like to use the word ruggedized, and some we specifically like to use the word industrial.
Right.
What you'll find and what we'll discuss is about a thing called certifications, and we'll go through what certification is and what the process is as well.
Brilliant.
So there is a difference. We don't just like to say ruggedized, because when you say ruggedized,
hardened is another word.
Hardened, ruggedized. What that generally means is that you throw in any old chipset that you might have in a standard switch into a shell.
Just put a bit of rubber around it.
Absolutely. Just make sure it's a little bit hardened, a little bit tougher, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's ready for an industrial application. So it's very different.
Okay. So basically, an industrial switch is designed for those harsher conditions to work in environments where a normal switch wouldn't, and I think that's as easy a definition as we can find. They're built to last a little bit longer than a normal switch, I'd say.
Yeah. So the mean time between failure is a lot higher on an industrial switch, and there's reasons for that as well, which
we'll go into. Yeah. The demand for industrial switches is on the rise, and there's a few reasons for that. As the slide says, local authorities and businesses in general. So the industrial switches applies across smart cities, warehouses, all sorts of other ventures out there. And the whole purpose of it is to just keep things more connected, and more devices basically connected to a network in more places. I think that's reasonable to say as well.
Yes. So basically, we're in a stage in our industrial evolution where we want things to be connected all the time, but more importantly, we want things that never was connected before to be connected. So we control them and we can see them. And things where like Wi-Fi, where we use that Wi-Fi is really important today. So it's really something that has created a need for getting things like wireless connectivity into places where it wasn't before.
Yeah.
And sometimes those places are tougher to reach.
Oh yeah, that's where the industrial nature of the switch comes in.
Absolutely. That's why you would need something that's ruggedized because, for example, let's say you're walking around outside and you leave the office and you're going towards a cafeteria office. I'm using our office as an example.
Yeah.
Kind of a shared cafe around the corner. So sometimes, and I've certainly been to business parks around the UK where 4G, 3G connectivity is virtually non-existent. That's how bad it is. So making sure that you've got that connectivity for people outdoors so that they can Wi-Fi call and things like that is really important. And in order to get that Wi-Fi outdoors, sometimes you might need a device that allows you to get that far. And sometimes it's not even about where, sometimes it's about where, like in terms of distance as well.
Yes.
So getting further. We've all been in a place where we've tried to install something that's just out of reach. So using a little bit of knowledge, we can now get to this.
Yeah, so there's numerous places here you can put them in, lampposts and just all stuff like that. And you wouldn't want to put a normal switch in a lamppost.
We couldn't.
Would you?
That's the point.
That's it. That's it. All right. So carrying on, as Craig said, Wi-Fi coverage, it's expected everywhere we go, whether we're outside, whether it's raining, it doesn't really matter. And what we're finding that's driving this in terms of businesses, probably more so than local government, is that businesses are enhancing people's experiences while they're outside. Whether you go to a cider festival in Reading or wherever, very generally people will offer a free Wi-Fi service. You opt into the Wi-Fi service, and the benefits for business are there because the business can then offer to market its services to you. So there's a benefit there for businesses to build up their customer bases. So they want to supply Wi-Fi wherever they are, wherever they can be. And the other part is the IoT, which Craig's going to talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, so IoT is the Internet of Things. What is the Internet of Things? It's what I mentioned before. It's where things are now connected all the time. Things that weren't connected before. So let's say, for example, you're outdoors in a park and you're sitting on a bench. Maybe that bench has the option of being connected to the Wi-Fi.
Smart bench.
Smart bench, yeah. They're out there. They exist.
It's
not coming. It's already here. If you look online and Google things, you'll see that this is in place. I must admit, I've not sat on one myself. But I know you can have.
We've seen pictures.
I've seen pictures. Yeah, I know there's certainly around California where California is a place that's really on top of things when it comes to smart cities. But it's a natural evolution. London now, if you walk around, you've got Wi-Fi everywhere. And getting it to free Wi-Fi as well. So that's what the Internet of Things is. It's about making sure that you pick up a pen and that pen's probably got some sort of electronic device that allows you to Bluetooth to a speaker or whatever, and
a pen.
Everything is everywhere.
I won't be happy until it can do the writing for me. Okay, just so we know.
Yeah, what's text to voice? You've already got that there.
Yes. So here's just a little bit of an illustration, moving from smart benches to a smart city overall. So here's a few kind of examples of just where we're going with the smart cities, with the add on to the smart cities, the incoming rollout of 5G and things like that. That's going to enable a lot of the stuff that we can see on this slide. Self-driving cars, the old
Self-driving
vehicles,
cars. More importantly, and these are real-world examples, charging pods. We've all seen those charging pods outside
Indeed.
supermarkets and things like that. Now, how they actually work is that you have your phone connected and your app, and when you plug it in, you actually use Wi-Fi connectivity to make a transaction across that. So the Wi-Fi has to be there for that, and that's an outdoor environment or a parking lot, something like that.
Well, there's parking on there. They were talking about being in constant connection with all the car parking spaces, so you can get a real-time update to your phone about where there's spaces and where there's not, to save that awful journey of going around a 13th floor multi-storey car park when there's no spaces available.
Absolutely.
So there's going to be benefits in here for the average consumer as well as the highest level of teched up geek out there, isn't there? There's going to be advantages for all, and of course we're constantly talking about saving energy at the moment, and the smart city is gonna help with that, as well as more efficient transport and waste removal, which we don't dwell on too much.
Well, I mean, we all want to know where the bin man is and when he's coming and what dates they're coming. And if you get that instantly updated via tracking to your phone, you know exactly what you need to throw out when you need to throw it out. So it's not like it's a small thing. It's waste removal is large, and there's a commercial aspect there.
Yeah, you imagine the trope of the man running out with his wheelie bin in his pyjamas because he's forgotten. Well, you don't have to worry about that in a smart city, because you're going to be constantly reminded. To move on now to the factory automation, Craig's going to quickly talk through what's basically, this is a factory plan.
That's right. So not just smart cities, we're looking at things like factory automation as well, as the slide suggests. What does that actually mean? Let's start breaking things down now. So an industrial switch, I mentioned before, it's not just a hardened thing. There's things called certifications, right? We'll go a little bit into that in the next slide.
That's coming up.
But what that means is that you have to put these switches in an environment, and sometimes that environment has a very specific set of things that need to be met to meet safety standards and protocols. Now, what you have to do is have a certification on these switches that meets those protocols. And that's really where the industrial part of the switch comes in. So, for example, if you're putting it into a robotics environment, now generally with robotics, what you might have is a lot of interference created from the machinery. So if you're putting in a normal switch into that environment and your chipboard is reflected on that, and it's created, whether it's shock or whether it's some sort of interference from Wi-Fi, you have to have a standard that says this device is going to perform because this is what we've checked and we do those tests.
Sure.
And that's where the industrial part comes into it. That's the slight difference between a normal switch and an industrial switch, is that it goes through those certification processes. So here, this would be a typical factory. You've got your robotic machines. It might be conveyor belts that you've got. And it monitors how many devices have gone through, and it has sensors. So really, we're looking at sensors as well as wireless here. We need to make sure these sensors provide the right information at the right time, or everything can fall apart very quickly, very easily. So that brings us into another aspect, which is really about resilience and about speed as well. So with an industrial switch, it's actually quite possible to create these topologies where you've got faster failover and you have redundant protocols and things like that as well.
Sure. Okay. Now we're going to move into the portfolio of switches that D-Link currently sell.
So let's break it down, what we've got and why we've got it. I'll start at the top. So we have a DIS 700G, and what that is that's a industrial 24-port switch with SFP ports. Now, the idea of that is that's an aggregator. So you imagine you've got all of your edge switches, has to go back to somewhere to a core.
This is the core then?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it can be used as a core, or it can be used as an edge to lead on to a standard core, for example. But maybe this is in the factory area and there's lots of different switches around that place, and it has to fiber feedback. So that's where you would put it.
This 700 is top of the range, as it would suggest there.
Well, it's top of the range in our industrial portfolio. You see.
Sure, but not
the
in
idea
the switches overall. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The idea of that is you have to have something that feeds back, right? So
Okay.
there's no point in having all of these switches in an environment like that feed back to a standard switch, which is going to be interfered with, because then your core goes down.
Okay.
So in some cases you do need an aggregator switch.
Yeah.
What you generally have more jotted around is probably the IS300Gs. Now what these are is they're a managed switch, so it's a layer 2 managed switch, fully managed, full CLI that you can monitor on those. And these would be jotted around, perhaps in a ring topology, so that you'd be able to failover.
Okay.
The IS200 is slightly different, so it's more of a smart switch. But still has that ruggedized environment for it as well.
Okay. And then
So not quite the same feature sets as 300s, less SFP ports, but it's got that smart switch that everybody's used to in terms of the CLIs.
sure.
Okay. The IS100Gs and the 100Es, I'll mention them together because they're both unmanaged switches. Okay, so those would be right on the very edge, and you might cable in or connect PoE cameras, that sort of thing, Wi-Fi access points, or access control. That's something that a lot of people always forget. Access control, things like doors, how you would use an RFID chip to get in with it, or a punch pad, or even communications on the panels like a SIP. Because most of those access control panels, you press a button, you speak to someone. That's actually digital, and that's generally used by SIP. So that's also something that you can connect with.
Sure, and we'll talk about the difference between the G and the E series a little bit later on.
We'll go through to the features.
Now, just on the general range as a whole, all of our industrial switches are built to work in the most extreme of temperatures. Even powering up from a cold start is perfectly possible on the D-Link industrial switches. So as you can see on there, the switches will run between a minus 40 degrees centigrade all the way up to 75 degrees. So we did talk about having a picture of a penguin and then a lion sunbathing or something like that to illustrate this little bit more. But you can guarantee that wherever you are, you're going to be okay with a D-Link switch. And the reason for that is, for instance, like a chemical lab where everything has to be kept nice and cool.
Absolutely.
Where a normal switch won't function.
Yeah, it's very easy to look at that and think, oh, well, our UK temperatures are never going to reach that. But then you think about chiller cabinets and things like that. Those certainly can. Food storage and examples.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. High availability. Craig's going to talk about this one because this one's a little bit technical about recovery times.
So high availability is something absolutely essential in pretty much every network environment if you do it right. What that means is when one device goes down, your whole network doesn't go down, or maybe all those devices.
Hence the image.
Hence the image. Yeah, you have to stop it because it's very easy for some things to cascade and stop. So we've got a little image here that will show you what I mean. So when we mentioned that the 700 will work as a core, that's your top, that's your aggregator. So that's where all the cable connections can go. Now we have our DIS 300s around, and that's in a ring topology. So you'll notice that if one of those devices goes down, yes, you might have some connections go, but the rest of your network is able to actually get back to the core if you start looping things through and adding in redundant links. And then again, you have the 100s on the edge, and those would be unmanaged switches, but you don't necessarily need to manage them because the 300 is going to be that device that controls how it connects anyway. So if you're working on different VLANs and things like that, you'd do it at the 300 level.
At that level, and then
then that's just really a way of plugging in other devices.
Sure. Okay. Now, everyone's nightmare. A broken mobile phone. But this is just to illustrate that, as we did touch briefly on the introduction, all of our industrial switches are both shock and vibration resistant, and they have they've passed the tests and have a certain safety certificates attributed to them.
They do, and it's not just a case of here's a certificate, you release the product, and that's it.
Sure.
We're certainly able to get more tests done with this device and see if it fits your requirement, if you have certain specifications. So don't just look at this or a data sheet and think, well, that's all it can do. Definitely not the case. If you have a project, come to us. We can try and get that certified against what you're looking for.
We'll put them through rigmarole, and brilliant. One of the key points about an industrial switch, I think, is the next slide, which is the fanless design.
That's right. So fanless design is actually very important. A, because it's less moving parts. Secondly, what it also means is these can go into, say, an IP55 rated box, which means it can go on outside. It's not going to cause condensation, therefore it's not going to break down because of any excess water that's in the box or anything like that. It allows you to keep going for longer. And that's why the mean times are so high as well on these.
Brilliant. So, as we said earlier, some more common specifications across the portfolio. Just going into what we've talked about in a little bit more depth. And again, this is Craig's area.
So every one of our switches is IP30 rated, which basically means that it's resistant against dirt and things like that. Dust. Yeah, absolutely. So it's an in-case shell. Redundant power supplies. This is really important. They're very different power supplies on these smaller units than a standard switch. What you actually get is just like an electrical power supply, and that might be an electrical power supply that you already supply if you're one of those kind of resellers anyway. But what that means is that you just cable it in. Say, like we said, lampposts, for example, would have a power supply that comes into a circuit, and then you break that circuit out. Right. So what you can actually do is you can hook into that circuit if it's already there for power to power the device. If it's not there, you can just plug it in and provide that power using your standard circuits. But what it also means is that on each of these devices, there's actually two power supplies that you can put into it. So if one of the power supplies goes, you've still got a power supply to power it. Yeah. So you're not just getting redundancy for your network, you're getting redundancy for the actual circuits as well.
That's cool. Yeah.
Ring protection, that's really important to discuss. ERPS is what we use for our high availability, and what that means is there's a lot of different topologies that you can do in these circuits so that you can get really fast handover, much faster than your standard switches would be, say, for example, spanning tree and all of your link aggregations. It's much faster than that. So by default, it's 50 to 200 milliseconds. And then beyond that, if you want it even faster, say, for example, traffic lights and things like that, and something in a real environment where it's life or death, we have something called Profinet that we're able to do as a project level.
Contact us for more details.
Absolutely.
So as promised, the differences between the 100E and the 100G.
Yep. So the 100E is fast Ethernet on your copper ports, and the 100G is your gigabit Ethernet.
That was quick.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the basic difference, isn't it? Yeah.
That's right. Now you'll notice that they come with SFP ports, which is quite unusual actually for an unmanaged switch to come with SFP.
Okay.
But the reason is you have to go distance. This is all about getting distance. So let's say, for example, you've got these devices that could be 10 kilometers away from your core.
Of course, yeah.
So you just put these out to cameras that are simple fiber cable connection coming to these cameras that you're able to use and monitor really big, vast areas. So they have to have SFPs for it. Looking at this, you can probably see that we've also got PoE on some of these switches, and this is something that's really important.
Yeah.
Because what you can actually do with the power supplies, you can have a different power supply that might give you a little bit more boost in how much power you're actually providing as well. These switches, or at least the 300 switches, which we'll go into, do have different power supplies and power that they can output across. So we can do PoE and we can do PoE plus, which is like 30 watts, so up to 30 watts. But some of them actually go further. We'll go into that in a moment.
Okay. But first, we have the 200 series.
Yeah, so the 200G, if you're familiar with any kind of smart switch, this was going to be really familiar to you.
Sure.
It's basically what we've done before in a more ruggedized case. Does come with certifications, but not quite the same as all of the other industrial switches. So it's slightly different, but it can provide a way of slotting this switch into positions, or maybe end users, for example, that might not be looking towards the full industrial range, but
Right.
maybe they have a small requirement, and we can certainly slot this one in. It comes with some same thing for ERPS, but not quite as fast as the industrial switches for that model.
Sure. Yeah. And the best bit about these, they're on promo at the moment. So
Absolutely.
contact your sales manager for more details.
Yeah.
You didn't know that, Craig, did you?
I did. I'm too busy in my dungeon.
You're too busy. Yeah.
So back to the 300s. So these are our fully managed switches now. And again, we mentioned our Profinet support, which is where we have that really fast handover and room redundancy. And we've actually got these certified for traffic control. I think it's the NEMU TS2 environment that we're able to go in. So these are fully certified for that kind of traffic handover where you've got traffic lights. So you imagine how amazing, how accurate we have to be for traffic lights. That goes wrong. I mean,
and how tough they have to be. That really does prove the shock and vibration resistant that they're certified to use on trains and things like that. Taking the train into work, I can attest.
Even on buses. I mean, we've even
buses,
had racing cars and things like that being interested in these things where they're trying to monitor all the circuits and things. So it's really interesting. But this is where it comes in. Now you'll see that they're actually DIN rail mounted as well. And a DIN rail is really just like a bar that comes across, you get clips and you just clip it on. So again, it's not like your standard rack is required, and these can be placed around wherever you need them. Full syslog capabilities in your port mirroring is really important for the diagnostics, and alarm systems as well.
Brilliant.
So you know if there's a security alert been broken.
Cool. So the 100, 200 and 300, they're all DIN rail, but
They're all DIN rail.
The 700 is just, it's a normal rack.
It's a normal rack because that's an aggregator switch.
Sure. And onto that normal
there we go.
rack switch.
Your normal rack switch. And these are your SFP ports. So you'd have your transceivers going into these. Industrial transceivers, we'll go into that in a moment in a couple of slides, because they obviously have to have different temperature requirements as well.
And
so
the part that a lot of people forget.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
When they're pricing these up, especially.
It's not that a normal transceiver wouldn't work in it, but obviously if you're putting that device into that area, you've got to have something, a transceiver. It's like a problem.
That reminds me of buying like a £1,000 iPhone and putting in a £4 case that you bought off eBay. I don't know why people do stuff like that. It's crazy for me. Okay, so we're zooming through these. So now onto the...
so this is something that's very different.
Yes.
Very different.
Yes.
So we've mentioned industrial switches right now, but we also do an industrial style router. And it is a full router. It has VPN capabilities, and that's really important because what you'd have is a dual SIM. So you'd have 2 SIM cards that you can put into this device to give you 4G connectivity in an outdoor environment. Very simple, low power requirements for these. And then you can actually build a VPN from that device out to a centralized server, say back at headquarters. Now you've got the option of having locally access the storage to those devices. So you would put in things like cameras, you could put in other devices like access control, all that sort of thing where we mentioned about SIP. Now you've got a gateway into somewhere. Imagine putting these into a traffic light and you're able to control the traffic light and change all the settings of the traffic light because you've got a gateway there that's going back to your headquarters. And then you plug that in with a single port. So a single port comes out into a switch. Again, one of the switches that we discussed. Now you're in an environment where you can start getting things connected great distances.
Would these be as tough as the industrial switches? Would they be the same sort of regulated?
Slightly different standards on them. So you do, again, you have to be really careful about the certification process and where you're putting them. But it just gives you so much flexibility in what you can do and where you can go now.
But much different to a standard business router or something else that we'd say.
Absolutely.
Much more
Yeah. I mean, we really are talking sort of smart cities. Yeah. But really, I mean, you can put one of these things into an outdoor environment. Say you've got a requirement where you're a business park owner or something like that, and or even just someone who's got a large area. You can put these into an outside box so you get connectivity to your cameras in a different area.
Fantastic. Cool.
So we mentioned about the power supplies and the transceivers as well. Transceivers are industrial for our range, so we have industrial transceivers different from our standard transceiver sets, and that will allow you to do single mode, multi-mode, and distance as well. So we have one for every kind of scenario, and different power supplies. So sometimes the switch itself might require a power supply of say 14 watts, and then anything additional to that might be provided to the PoE. And what's nice about our switches is some of them have the options of going to 60 watts. Yeah, so that's very different. That's outside the standard of 802.3 AT, which is up to 30 watts, you see, which generally powers most things, but this will power things like radio dishes.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's
so
cool.
That's going into a completely different market, but that's what the switch can provide you.
Fantastic. And everything comes with a lovely D-Link 5-year warranty.
Yeah.
Just to ensure your peace of mind for a full 5 years. Yeah. So brilliant. I think that's about it. Do you have anything more to add, Craig? We've once again, like last week, we've just about run out of time.
But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to send them in to us. Not a problem. If there's something you have a project, for example, and you want some help with it, or maybe you just think that there's some problem areas. I know I've been in some installs, so what I generally do is help with wireless site surveys and things like that. And I've certainly been into areas where before, when I first started working here at D-Link, there were some real problems. Trying to make sure that environments are there. So there we go.
Thanks, Craig. So no questions from our viewers this week. I think it's fairly
self-explanatory.
Fairly self-explanatory. So we'll wrap it up there. But the contact details are on the screen if anyone wants to drop us an email. uki-sales@dlink.com. Craig gets those emails, even though it's a sales email address. We won't expose you to the sales people to come in with their tactics. Craig picks those emails up, or just give us a call, 0208 955 9000. As usual, anyone who hasn't managed to listen, this will be distributed to anybody who registered and will be put up on our YouTube channel, which is now gathering pace. We're moving up the charts in terms of subscribers and views on the last video. The Nucleus one proved quite popular. A lot of people tuned into that after the event. So we'll be adding to that, as well as I'm adding product videos to that. We still have some spaces on an upcoming training session. Unfortunately, the northern session has sold out up in Manchester.
Yeah, that's next week, I believe.
Next week.
So looking forward to anybody who's looking at is attending the course.
Yeah, but we still on the 5th of November, so make it a memorable bonfire day for yourself. 5th of November at our South Ruislip head office. Just let us know if anybody out there is interested in attending that event.
Yeah, so that's a switching course again. I'll be delivering the course, and we'll be looking at things like how you set up VLANs, stacking, LACP, spanning tree protocols, looking at some CLI commands, all that sort of thing, to really get you hands-on with the kit and find out what kind of topologies you can do with it.
Fantastic. So the next webinar will be in 2 weeks. Craig will be joining me again as we take you through the joys of smart home and all the products in and around that D-Link can provide for you. We've got a couple of new products that we'll be able to talk about on that call. So that'd be great. And we'll also be joined by the UK&I country manager Paul Routledge for a special guest appearance, which will be great for everyone. So as I said, the contact details on the screen. Any queries, anything you want to know at all, just drop us an email or give us a quick call. And that's about it from us. So hopefully we'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, thanks for listening.